You know, many have messaged me asking if what Hollywood portrays of daily life in prison is real. You know, you'd really be surprised. Hey everyone, my name is James Nussbaumer, and I'm the author of these two books, The Master of Everything, A Story of Mankind in the World of Illusion We Call Life. This is the pilot to an ever-developing series, and here is its sequel, just released, called Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom, Lessons from A Course in Miracles. Both of these books are on sale everywhere books are sold and published by Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. But first, before I get going, I want to say that I was with a very good friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time. Actually, just recently had met her, very recently, and she flew into my area, which I'm in Northeast Ohio right now, and we decided to walk a couple of city blocks away to see Sully, you know, Tom Hanks movie about, Sully, who landed the big aircraft passenger plane into the Hudson River. I think it was like 8 years ago or something like that. And Clint Eastwood is the director of the movie, and Tom Hanks, of course, stars in it as Sully. So on the way back from the movie, I knew that I had to get this video made for a certain reason, because I needed to upload it, being a Friday, over to my publisher at Ozark Mountain, because they're doing some things, you know, for marketing purposes for the books and everything. And I had a deadline to get this video out. So, but on the way home from walking a couple city blocks, the two of us got just drenched in a downpour. The big thundercloud came over, and it just moved out real quick and just poured on us. So I'm kind of soaking, and my shirt is drying, my hair is still wet and everything, but I jumped on here right now to make this video. But you know, while I was being interviewed 2 weeks ago on a BBS radio talk show, Quantum Healing Technical, QHTT, maybe many people know of it, by expert Julia Cannon, the daughter of the late Dolores Cannon. Actually, Dolores Cannon, D-O-L-O-R-E-S. But Julia had suggested to me that the content of my books portrayed a beautiful, poetic parallel to the prison that we make of our mind. All of us do. You know, and I commented to her that I was so glad that she noticed that the purpose in my work, and that she realized that, the purpose in my work. But, you know, spending 8 long years in prison certainly was the toughest ordeal, the toughest test that I have ever had to endure in my lifetime. And the toughest test for keeping my sanity is the best that I can say, let alone my safety, always looking over your shoulder. But, you know, we would walk to the chow hall while I was in prison 3 times a day, an experience I want to share with you. And that could be compared to a couple of city blocks, just like our walk from the movie theater today to see Sully. But prison is extremely segregated between blacks and whites, and it's very racial, and the gangs are whites against blacks, and it's and the Hispanics fit in there somewhere. But, you know, it's a very violent and volatile place. But, you know, and unofficially, the prison system will never admit that. They say that they've got it under control, but unofficially it's very segregated, and only by the doings of the inmates, because the inmates want to keep it that way so they can have their gang wars going on. But this helps keep the gang activity, like I said, just keeps it alive. But walking to the chow hall, you will see blacks with blacks and whites walking with whites. There are 2 sides to the chow hall, not that the prison system is set up, but that the inmates decided to set up. 2 sides of the chow hall with separate entrances. One side is usually where the blacks sit and eat, and on the other side is where the whites on the other side would sit. But sometimes with the overcrowding conditions, because it's severely overcrowded, and with time restraints of getting inmates into the chow hall and out of the chow hall, a guard may harshly direct an inmate to sit on the opposite side of his racial choice. You know, which was the case with me one day. And an inmate must really take his tray or food and find a seat very quickly with 8 minutes to enjoy the lovely slop that they give us, and it really is slop. Any talking during a meal can mean a trip to the hole for at least 5 days or so, and this is, in this regard, eating is not a pleasurable experience in prison. It's just seen as more as a necessary activity of the day. But one day when my attitude was already edgy over all of this volatileness and the violent din of the cell block, I was already edgy while waiting in line to be handed a tray of food. I was directed by a guard to enter the side of the chow hall where the blacks sat to eat. And I really, on the outside world, I enjoy meeting. I don't have that prejudice problem. But in there, it was just a different story because of the fear factor. But this was really not a big deal for me, like I had said, because I had no reason to worry about conflict. But then again, in the back of my mind, part of me was worrying about conflict because maybe someone wouldn't understand me or take me the wrong way as I carried, or maybe they just wouldn't want me to be there in the first place. But as I carried my tray from the food line to the seating area, I came upon 2 tables for 4, each having one available seat. In an instant, without hesitation, I sat at the table on my left. I really didn't recognize the 3 black men, but all much younger than me, with whom I was seated. Keep in mind, I was at a prison with mostly younger men, and at the time, I was around 50 to 51 years old at that time. But a typical method of eating so that one may comply with the 8-minute rule is to keep your face turned down toward the tray and just shovel the food in and get what you can nutrition-wise and get out of there as quick as you can, because they want to get you in and get you out. While I was minding my own business with my food, my face down to my tray and feeding in and, picking at maybe what I didn't want to eat and what I did want to eat and shoveling it in, the man across from me discreetly spoke, saying that he would like to see me on the outside when I finished eating. And he kind of firmly said that, which had me worrying, oh no, what am I up against here? So without any thought of danger or possible conflict, and without hesitation, I looked up from my tray of food and I said to him calmly, but without a hint of firmness, and I was kind of humble, but maybe with a little, without a hint of firmness is what I want to say, but out of humbleness and with maybe a hint of strength, if that can make sense to you, I said to him, that will be fine. We both left the table at the same time, and as we extended our curiosity towards one another, and as we exited the building with lots of other traffic going to and from the chow hall, I said to him in a quick, straightforward fashion, as we got outside the chow hall here, I said, you wanted to speak to me? Now I kind of got firmly with him because I felt that I had to let him know that I wasn't a pushover, because that's what my thought was. That's what my perception of this man was, is that he wanted to take advantage of me. He looked straight at me, straight in my eye, and said that he had noticed me around the prison camp, and that I carried myself as though I wasn't afraid of anyone or anything. He added that he noticed that I seemed to stick to myself and didn't mingle much. Of course, that made me think, wow, why is this man watching me and looking at me? So my guard went up right again there. Immediately, I thought I was being recruited for his gang or for some other kind of a problem, because that's really the norm, and that's what goes on in prisons. Then he asked me a question in a very challenging way, as though he were testing me. What are you about? He said, and I was prepared to tell him, he needed to mind his own business, but my poor attitude and the prejudice in me, because that's what brings you out in prison, and I really didn't want to feel that way, but it was at my own defense. My poor attitude seemed to have calmed down for some reason, I had let the black and white situation just go away. And I looked this man straight in the eyes, and I saw him for what he was. And I looked straight at him again, and with firm sincerity, firm but honest sincerity, I said to him, I said, look here, this prison situation is a bitch on us all. And we all have our own peaceful way of dealing with it. So if you don't mind, my way of dealing with it is simply sticking to myself. Well, he looked around to make sure that nobody was looking, then gave me a quick thumbs up. And a thumbs up in prison is an equivalent to a firm, good handshake on the outside. And handshakes really aren't existent in prison because they just don't want it there, because everybody hates each other the way it is. But since then, occasionally we would pass one another in the yard and somewhere else on business as usual, going to the chow hall again, going to rec, going from your area, your housing area, to the yard, going to maybe to medical. We would pass each other. And so, you know, he would always give me an affirmative nod of the head, you know, and that he was positive about me. And but the nod is simply, like I'd said, a positive, good-natured acknowledgement in that he was wanting to, seeking safety in me as I was seeking safety in him. And that safety is oneness, wholeness of mind. He was seeking that in me, and I was seeking that in him, and we touched each other that way. For me, there was a crystal clarity within me that I had nothing to feel guilty about when he first approached me at the chow hall table that day. But because I was guiltless, I had no fear. Whether he realized it or not, there was a brother-to-brother exchange of releasing each other from fear and freeing each other from guilt. What guilt, you might be asking, could I be talking about? Well, it's the guilt of choosing not to be afraid when something in you is telling you that you should be afraid. That part of us that always tells us we need to be afraid. And when we don't, when we decide not to be afraid, that part of us wants to throw guilt on us. So it's the guilt of choosing not to be afraid. But you know, as Marianne Williamson would say in her wonderful book, A Return to Love, she says, when you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. Never forget this, for in him, you will find yourself or lose yourself. And that actually comes from A Course in Miracles, but Marianne Williamson had put it in her own way, and I love her for that. But more on the holy encounter in both of my books, if you want to know more. But I agree with Marianne Williamson when she asks us to see what an insane, vicious circle the ego-based mind creates for us. The ego, it's that fearful, doubting Thomas side in us. It's that fearful side of us that as soon as I had to enter that the black side of the chow hall, that fear set in. Oh no, I'm the only white guy going to be sitting over here. That was the ego penetrating fear in me, rather than wholeness and just relaxing and not worrying about it. But at first, you know, I really didn't realize that this entire encounter with my friend, you know, was not only a holy encounter, like Mary Ann Williamson had said, but also it was a holy instant, which means a present moment, an instant of presence, the now that many people are writing about. I noticed that the initial confrontation did not shake me a single bit, really, with him at that time. It really didn't. I realized as I laid back on my bunk later, I thought I was calm through all this. Wow, how could that be? But that built a certain confidence in me when we met outside the chow hall to talk. So I knew that I was kind of calm, but everything was going to be okay. And so I analyzed this, and I analyzed this to think, you know, It was just our interconnection with each other, which was the calmness of it all. But even though I had no idea what might transpire, I truly did feel no fear at the time. The no fear feeling was actually a sensation of relief. It really was. But it was not a relief from fear. It was more of a feeling of wholeness or togetherness, like, here I am as I am, that kind of a feeling. And A Course in Miracles goes on to tell us that the beautiful relationship you have with all your brothers is a part of you, because it is a part of God Himself. Isn't that beautiful? As you offer a holy instant, a present moment, if you will, to your brother, your sister, your soulmates that you run into, that you encounter every day, with the help of the Holy Spirit, who is your inner divine guidance system, He will give it back to you. Time is our friend if we leave it to our inner guidance system, the Holy Spirit, to use. He needs very little to restore you to the wholeness of what you are. A Course in Miracles goes on to add and further teaches that, offer the miracle of the holy instant, which once again is the present moment. Offer the miracle of the holy instant, the present moment, of how you're feeling in that moment, true to your heart, not out of fear, true to your heart. Offer the miracle of the holy instant through the Holy Spirit, through your inner guidance system, but leave His giving it to you up to Him. I hope this makes sense, everyone, and I once again, I hope you're thinking about your own life and all of the gifts that you have to offer to humanity for a peaceful world where we're all getting what we want in this world, which isn't it really inner peace and freedom, which gives us the abundance and wealth that we want in our life? Here's to the Holy Spirit in you. God bless. Thanks for listening to me.